Welcome to the Circle Star Firearms and Outdoors podcast, your home for the latest products and news in the shooting sports, hunting, and the great outdoors. And now, here are your hosts, Jake Coffin and Jason Westmoreland.
Hey everybody, Jake and Jason at you, coming at you live.
Ish. As always, from Circle Star Firearms and Outdoors.
All right, hold on, we'll do it again. Hey everybody.
It's Jake and Jason here live from Circle Star Firearms and Outdoors.
Another great podcast,
but not live.
Another great time. Never live.
We're going to say it every
alive.
time. We're alive.
Having a great
like
time.
It.
Another work week's over. It's Friday. It's going to be a good time for the weekend. And we figured the perfect topic going into a fun weekend.
It doesn't sound like a fun topic. Preface.
Yeah,
But it is.
It's the fun stuff. It's the cool stuff. It's the wild stuff. It's the good stuff. We are talking all things
NFA.
or
National Firearms Act. Yep.
which will be a kind of a fun conversation because after this last week we've got some emails from across the globe, kind of getting the idea what they're listening to, and some of the folks that listen to us now religiously from across the globe, they're gonna look at some of this and go, well, that's weird, because I will say, especially when the National Firearms Act is involved, we are backwards than a lot of the other countries. Mm-hmm. But it's such a process to get, let's say, like a silencer right here, but we can just walk in and buy an AR, where they can just walk in and buy a silencer, and they can't buy an AR.
Ever. Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah, super restricted over there. So silencers, we call them suppressors because they're only silent in the movies. So truthfully, a suppressor is going to make something hearing safe. Mm-hmm. Right on the verge, 120 decibels, give or take, somewhere between, depending on the caliber, probably 118 to 130.
Yeah.
And that's going to make it borderline hearing safe. It is not going to make it like in the movies. And that's unfortunately what a lot of the restrictions are for, is because people who've implemented these laws only know about them from the movies. And see, that's scary. That's
what the National Firearms Act was originally. So in 1934, in reaction to a bunch of like prohibitionary gangster tactics and stuff, Congress came in and enacted what was the first major gun control legislation in the U.S. Prior to that, you could just buy a machine gun out of a Sears and Roebuck catalog, and they'll mail you a Thompson or BAR.
And if you ever see any of those old catalogs, oh my God, they're cool.
They're so awesome. Do you need a Thompson? Here you go. And so that's when everything that we see now as what we call the NFA, the National Firearms Act, came to be. We regulated silencers, which they're called silencers because when Hiram Maxim originally patented the first one, he called it a silencer. Most folks nowadays call them suppressors because they suppress, they don't silence a firearm.
That was just good marketing on his part.
I think so.
That backfired.
Then you've got short barrel rifles. That's any rifle that has a barrel less than 16 inches, which gets convoluted nowadays.
I was like, how deep are you going to go down that rabbit hole?
You've got short barrel shotguns, any shotgun with the barrel less than 18 inches. And then you get into the machine guns. Anything that'll fire more than one round with a single trigger pull. AOWs, which is kind of a catch-all. So cane guns, the briefcase guns, stuff like that. Pin guns, which I want a pin gun. And then you have destructive devices. That's anything bigger than 50 caliber.
That's a real fun stuff.
And it's stuff that goes explodes.
Yep.
So that's what it originally started, and that's where you get the $200 tax stamp from that we all pay now, because it was designed to be a punitive tax that was a barrier to ownership.
Yep.
So if you really had to have it, you would have paid $200, and in 1934, looked up there today, it'd be like $3,500 today.
That doesn't sound right. It seems like it should be a lot more than that. Like $200 in the 30s today. I feel like $200. I feel like $200 in the 80s is $3,000 today.
It feels like
it really does feel like it.
Well, it's kind of an interesting thing because my dad was doing the deal. He recorded some podcasts for the Texas Ranger Museum there in Waco, talking about some of the old guns the Texas Rangers were issued, and some of the the companies still actually have these things, as they've had them forever. And one of them was a Thompson submachine gun.
Nice.
That they bought from Colt for the Ranger service in 1922, and they paid $222 for it. I was like, man, that sounds like a lot of money. And I did the inflation calculator, so about what a tax stamp is, and it's like $3,500, which is more than it should have cost.
Yeah. So you're basically paying the same amount as you paid for the firearm or whatever, just to be able to possess it.
And so not a lot of people did. I mean, they're out there. There were ownership people that were into guns and stuff, but not super common.
Now, you mentioned, I think we're going to focus probably more on suppressors on this one, because you can get super convoluted when it comes to SBRs and.
Well, let's kind of hit on that. Let's hit on those topics real fast.
Okay. The biggest one that intimidates everybody, that everybody's like, what's going on, right, is the braces.
Yes. So, luckily for us, the Biden administration, currently who's in office, don't know how long he's going to be out there on the internets, has tried some very wide-sweeping gun control legislation through executive order. And the good news for us as Second Amendment advocates, he's lost like heavily at every turn.
Yeah.
And so he came in, and originally when Sig Sauer developed the arm brace, it was designed to be a strap device that goes to form to help people with upper arm disability or some sort of disability to be able to fire an AR. But then the NFA branch and the ATF kept going like circles over, well, could you shoulder fire it? Well, no. And then they came back and said yes. And then they came back and said no again. And then they came back and said yes, that as long as a temporary repositioning of it doesn't constitute a reconfiguration of it, you could shoulder fire it. And that's when everything went nuts. You got the SB Tacticals. That's when Magpul kicked out one. That's when everybody kicked out one. The ones that look like a regular stock, they just like a regular stock, but they're a pistol brace.
But yeah, they're open on the bottom. Yeah.
And then about a year and a half ago or so,
Doesn't seem that long, but yeah, I think you're right.
Biden came out, and they always use some tragedy to their advantage, but they said that people were using these for unlawful use.
Nefarious reasons.
Nefarious reasons, that's what I was looking for,
Yep.
Thank you. And outlawed them with stroke of a pen. Well, everybody sued them. And the Biden administration lost, and the gun owners of America and another Second Amendment group got an injunction against them, and then they got a stay, and basically the executive order was overruled in, I believe, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. I have to look it up.
No,
and
you're correct.
Braces are back being legal again. So while they are intended to be a shooting or stability aid to help someone fire these shorter barreled rifles single-handedly, as far as of right now, you can go back to putting them against your shoulder temporarily. And it's a gray area as far as how you're using it, and I'll admit that. But it does add. I mean, I know several people that use them as intended, and I know some people that use them as not intended. But
you know, the most frustrating thing, if you run down that rabbit hole, and it's a deep one.
Oh, it is. There's a whole podcast on it.
Yeah, when this was enacted, allegedly, and their sign pointed to this, the ATF knew that this would be overturned. They also knew by doing this.
This is the brace thing, not the NFA.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the brace thing. This would put the brace manufacturers out of company, or out of business. It would make the distributors who sell them to shops like us not want to carry them anymore, because the last thing they want to do is get stuck with
$1 million
worth of inventory. It would make law-abiding citizens who followed the laws either relinquish them, get a tax stamp for them, or destroy them.
So they were getting their gun control either way.
Either way. So even if it's overturned, there's nowhere you can get them.
Too late now. It's already happened, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of a little caveat to the NFA. Yeah. But as we're talking about a short barrel rifle, the brace helps it. It's designed to allow it to be fired one-handed, which is a handgun, right? But The short barrel rifle would be the same, everything else except the way the stock is, and that'll allow it utilizes a stock. And most people think like an AR stock, but this could be a 10-22 stock or a regular bolt action rifle stock, allowed to be fired from the shoulder, and that's where the SBR comes in. A short barrel shotgun, kind of the same idea. You don't really see the braces fall in the SBS world.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot of them, but they are out there. Kel-Tec makes them. Remington makes them. A lot of people will take an older shotgun and just cut it down. Very few AOWs out there, all other weapons. The guys that get into those already have pretty much everything else. They're looking for something weird. And then the destructive device guys, I know one. He's big into mortars and stuff like that. So he's collecting like military items.
Yep,
And so
that's his jam.
It's his jam.
Yep. So if I have
But the two things we deal the most with, and we'll talk about them most, it'll be machine guns, because believe it or not, you can own a machine gun.
You can own a machine gun.
And then our number one by miles, suppressors. And there's been a bunch of change in the first quarter of 2024, and we'll discuss all that just the same.
Yeah. So I guess we'll break it down first. What is a suppressor?
So a suppressor is the easiest way to describe it is nothing more than a muffler for a gun. If we all have a car, most of us have a car. If you go in and you cut the muffler off, it's loud. That's just the gas and the noise from the combustion of the motor. Just think of like a race car, just super noisy. But you put a muffler on your exhaust of your car. It's a chambered tube, for lack of a better term. It slows down the gases, it cools down the gases, and makes it quiet, so it's not as obnoxious. And that's what a suppressor does for a firearm. We control the release of the gas at the muzzle, we cool down the gas at the muzzle, and therefore we reduce the noise output of it. Where most of us, and Jason hit on this perfect a little minute ago, is that everyone's watched a movie or a TV show that had a SWAT team or special operators, or something that they had a suppressor on the gun, right? You put it on and, pew, pew. Think Jason Bourne, right? He's shooting people in a crowded
Nobody knows.
public place. Nobody knows. That's all bullshit.
They're gonna know.
They're gonna know.
They're gonna know.
And for several reasons. I mean, there are some, and I'm not saying you can't get to what we call Hollywood quiet, but in very limited circumstances. But even then,
It becomes a pretty ineffective firearm.
very much so. And even the quietest of the quietest make some sort of noise. I was shooting through my suppressor yesterday. I was shooting down it was trees on one side and trees on the other, and I was shooting a steel plate. I was building some ammo for it, and not only did my gun make a little bit of a noise, it kind of like, for those ever aired up a vehicle tire, and you took that air chuck off the hose, that phew, is about what it sounded like at the gun. But I thought it was neat because of the trees on both sides. You could hear the round travel in space before I hit the steel target I was shooting at, and then it sounded like I hit it with the sledgehammer.
Yeah, it's a little, impact is loud.
And so the nice thing about suppressor silencers is that I didn't have to wear ear pro. There were neighbors. There's houses around. It's in the country, but there's neighbors around. You're not going to bother them. It doesn't make a lot of noise. It doesn't distract from their quality of life. And then the other thing is, because we are controlling the gas as it expands out the muzzle, you're reducing felt recoil. So if you have a wife, a kid, you happen to be a little bit of recoil sensitive, it makes it shooting more pleasant. And at the same time, like the case of my 7 PRC, it's so light without the suppressor on it. It is brutal. When I say brutal, that's brutal with all caps. But I put my suppressor on it. I sit there and I shoot a box of ammo, and I can enjoy my firearm.
One nice thing to add to that for the hunters, which most people getting them are hunters,
And that's why a lot of them are.
it takes the majority, if not all, of the directionality out of the shot. And what that means is your target, let's say you're shooting at a herd of hogs 100 yards away. When you shoot, they can't identify exactly where that shot came from. So they're just as likely to run at you as they are away.
Because a lot of that is, and you're right, the directionality. The reason why we have ears on the sides of our head is so we can hear it from two different vantage points, and we can triangulate back where that origin sound comes from. Well, when there's no origin or very limited origin noise, and all of a sudden let's say you're a pig, right? And all of a sudden your buddy, all of a sudden it's whack, right there. Well, that's louder than anything you heard. That's going to scare you, and you're going to run away from it, which happens to be where I'm at. So here's my third follow-up shot.
Allows you to keep on doing it. It really is cool when it comes to, first I'm going to say predator hunting like coyotes, because typically they run in packs. They're smart. So when you shoot one, the one next to it, when he sees his buddy drop, his first instinct is to take a couple steps. So in case it was immediate danger, if it was a snake or something right in that area, to get away from that and then to stop and identify which direction it came from. Well, what happens when he takes a couple steps away and stops and starts looking around? It gives you the follow-up shot. Same with elk, like satellite bulls and stuff. When you're out there with your buddy, y'all both pack into the mountains and stuff, a lot of times there'll be 2 or 3 of them together. It'll allow you to get that first shot, and then whoever shoots the second to get that second shot.
Well, that happened to me. The only elk I've ever killed, I was shooting through the suppressor, and my buddy wasn't, and so it was 2 raghorn bulls, and last day of the hunt, so we decided to take them, and so I shot mine, and they're all bedded down, but mine was standing. So I shot that one, and while it was dying, they all stood up, and like, what the heck just happened? Like, you could see that thought bubble from them. And Byron shot the next one standing next to it. Yep. But the moment, and he was shooting unsuppressed, the moment he shot, they all took off.
Gone. They're gone.
So we were able to harvest a second bull because of the suppressor.
Now the biggest thing, and the thing that drives us crazy, and you were talking, how hard it is to get, or impossible to get certain firearms in other countries. But here, but you can walk into any store and get a suppressor. Some places it is required by law that you have a suppressor.
It's considered personal protection. Just like we wear ear pro, like muffs or something like that. That's how they classify. That's how they consider it.
And it should be. Almost, unless you're by yourself and you want to just abuse your own hearing, it should be required, because there's no reason. It shouldn't be a cost prohibitive stamp. There shouldn't be any reason you're not suppressed. I mean, look at all the guys that work here, 30s and 40s, and hearing aids. They're deaf. We're screaming at each other all the time.
I am that. I am almost permanently deaf to my left ear, and the audiologist walked in after my test. She goes, "You shoot right-handed, huh?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." I don't see how that applies. She goes, "Well, when you turn your head, your left ear takes all that blast." She goes, "That's why your left ear's dead."
Mine is, I've always tried to be cautious in my ears, always wear hearing protection and stuff, except for when I can't. And when you got to think, when can't you? Well, if I'm hunting and I'm in the woods in a stand and I'm listening
for all those little sounds,
those little crunches on the leaves and all that coming up. Well, I don't have time when the deer walks out to sit there, readjust, put hearing protection on. Like, they're going to see me moving around. I'm trying to be as stealth as possible, so I'm going to do that. Even if I only do that 3 or 4 times a year out of a super high caliber rifle, over 20, 30 years, it does significant damage, and it's ridiculous that it's regulated at all.
Well, I mean, but some of these cartridges, their decibel levels get 140, 150.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same level like standing next to a jet engine. And I forget the exact numbers, but just a brief amount of exposure to it can cause permanent hearing damage.
There has been some litigation trying to fight that, the HPA, Hearing Protection Act. It's just hard to get any traction on it for whatever reason. A lot of people are trying.
There's some great organizations out there that are trying really hard, but the problem is, this applies to everything. There's a bell curve to life, right? You've got 10% that is going to be super for it, that are 100% on board, and I'm talking general population, not just gun advocates. Right. That 20% or 10% are just do it now, do it now, do it now. You've got 10% think it is the devil incarnate. It is the worst thing that ever happened. And then you've got 80% in the middle that just don't really care one way or another. And that's who you're trying to sway. And the problem is the 10s on either side are so strong in their belief you'll never sway them. But those 80, they don't have experience. They don't have a lot of exposure to it, but they do have exposure to TV and movie. and that's what they base their experience on, and that's what we're trying to change and make it a little more educate.
Yeah, absolutely. It everybody would love if it was actually like that, but as we've discussed, it's not.
No.
It's not. But what it can do is it could save your hearing. It could save long-term damage.
So this is a true story about me. In college, I was going through the process of joining the Air Force. I'd already had my degree. I was just graduated, and I wanted to be it's called a combat systems operator. It's the guy that basically think modern day bombardier, and that's what I wanted to do. I knew I couldn't fly, but this was the next best thing, and I was dead set. I'd already gone through all the process. I had good grades. I tested well. I had a great interview. I was far enough along the process. They sent me to MEPS, and this is when I found out I had hearing loss. I was 20, 21 years old, and I was sitting in a little booth, and everyone's clicking that little button. I'm like, I think mine's broken. And they're like, it's not. And I go through MEPS, and turns out I have almost, I was like one level from deaf in my left ear, had no idea, right? No idea. And the doctor was surprised I could hear him talk. And it's his exact words. He goes, "Can you hear me?" I said, "Oh, yeah." And he tells me I have hearing loss. Like, that's BS. I mean, I can hear a dove at 100 yards. I hear deer crunch through the woods. He goes, "Yeah, but you can't hear nothing else."
Yeah, it's different pitches.
And so that barred me from the military. And I tried really, really hard in a bunch of different ways. It never worked out. And it barred me for something I really wanted to do in life. And so because of that, my son Travis, he has never shot unsuppressed because of it.
Mine's right there too.
Just because I didn't want something like, we hunt, we shoot, we enjoy the sport. That I didn't want something like hearing loss because of it, coming from shooting, to bar him from doing whatever he wanted to do when he grew up.
My kid's only 7, and if he sees rifles coming out at the range or something that aren't suppressed, he's walking away. He'll tell you, "No, I'm not going to be around here."
Yeah.
And it's something we want to be there with our dad or granddad, grandmother, whoever was shooting at the time. We want to be next to him, and instinctually, you hear something that loud, it hurts. You want to get away from it.
Oh, yeah.
And I want him to keep that instinct, like get away from it, man, because it feels like it hurts. It rings your bell because it is not good for you.
Not at all.
Yeah. So I want to get an NFA item. I want to get a suppressor.
Okay. So
What's required?
First off, you have to be a U.S. resident. Not necessarily a citizen, just a permanent resident. So if you're not from the U.S., but you're in the citizenship process and you have your green card, we can sell you a silencer or suppressor, whatever, an NFA item. You have to reside in the state that you purchase it. I can, if you're here you come to us because, we are one of the foremost authorities on them, and you decide, and you're from, let's say, Oklahoma, and you want to buy one from us because you like one of the models we sell or the manufacturers we represent, I can always send it back to your home state to let you do the process there, but the paperwork has to be done in your home state. But let's say that you're from Texas, because that's the majority of what we sell. It's relatively simple as long as you're patient, right? So there's 2 main ways to buy them. There is as an individual, which is exactly the way it sounds. You are buying the suppressor for you, or you can have an attorney draft a trust for you. They range from about $150 to $300. Yeah. And there are some that are better than others. Let me assure you this. And then once you have a trust, you as trustee or the managing partner, the director, let's say, of the trust, can buy the item on behalf of the trust. And then there's some other ways, but they're so rare, it's not what we're talking about. These are the 2 main.
And if you're not familiar with the trust, think of it as a company.
Yeah.
Right? Or a business that you're buying it on. You're like the president of the company, and you're buying stuff on the company's behalf, and the company technically owns it. But it's theirs, but you have rights to use it.
But you manage and control it. All right. So but the problem with this, there's pros and cons of each. So currently, we're getting suppressors back faster than I have ever had them back in
It's insane.
11 years. A couple years ago now, we went to e-form. So we went from paper forms to electronically uploading everything.
Right.
And then the wait time for a suppressor or NFA item was running about a year or so.
Roughly.
Because
right
there's still a lot of redundancy.
Some people a lot longer. Yeah,
Some shorter,
yeah.
but about the average, right? But starting in January 2024, they are now electronically uploading everything into their background check system. And because of this, if you never had a criminal history before and you don't have someone with a similar name and birth date as you out there, there's not another Jason Westmoreland with your birth date.
Right.
You're seeing approvals come back in a weekish. I mean, there's a guy that picked his up today that bought it yesterday.
Basically, what they're doing is very similar to running a NICS check.
Yep.
And as long as everything pops back squeaky clean,
Good to
you're
go.
good.
Super
now
fast.
that is, like I said, as an individual, that's happening.
That's exactly. On a trust, it's different because of the trust being a legal document. They want to make sure that it is a valid and legal document, and so they're sending all the trust to their in-house attorneys, the ATF attorneys, and having them reviewed for validity, and then they're approving.
So that's taking quite a bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a great date yet on those, but I'm going to say probably like 4 to 6 months if I had to guess.
I've been
right
telling
now.
everybody 10 months to a year still, just
Be safe.
yeah.
And he's not wrong. I had 2 come back so far in a month, but they were repeat customers that bought a suppressor in the last 12 months. So I think they're
Using the same trust. Yeah.
using the same trust. So I think there was already like some checks that were done that didn't take as long. So that's its own little
There's
caveat.
all kinds of things that can add to how long a trust is going to take as well. The more people you have on there. So you got to think, so if you send in a trust, they're looking at the individual on the trust. If there's only one, let's say your executor or whatever, and then there's the trust itself they have to look at. So that's 2 different things they have to look at. For every person you add onto that,
That's another background check.
that's another background check.
And here's the thing, and I tell this to people all the time. You want to add your brother, your best friend, your dad, your uncle, whoever. Well, you may not know your uncle was a hellraiser back in the day. He's a great guy now, but you don't know that there have been, it's a few times, they're uncommon, but I've had a couple that got disapproved from that transfer because there was a trustee with a criminal history that nobody knew about.
Nobody knew about. They didn't
So
share those details with anybody.
So, why, in your opinion, why would you choose an individual over a trust? If I'm coming in right now, it's like, hey, Jason, I'm gonna buy my first suppressor, but I don't know which way I should go with it. Let's take the time caveat out.
Yep.
Just what's best for me.
So if I wasn't taking time into consideration, which I would typically, but if I wasn't, I would look at my personal situation. Do I have children that are going to, people that are in that inner circle that I'm going to want to let them take it out of my possession?
Love it too.
Yeah. So that would be my reason to do a trust. Now, my reason to do it as an individual is because I want to own it. I don't want anybody to have it out of my possession. They're not going to take it. They don't need to. This is mine, and I'm going to dedicate it to this gun.
And see, it was interesting about that. I have a trust for all my NFA items, but I have never loaned one out ever.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, if someone comes to me and goes, "Hey, Jake, can I borrow that gun?" and it's got my suppressor on it, because they're going to go hunt, I kind of want to go hunting too.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you can let somebody use it as an individual. You just have to be around with the item.
Yeah, you got to be there because you're at the end of it, you're in control of it. It's your responsibility.
Correct.
If you do loan it out to a friend who is not on a trust, you do it as an individual, and said friend gets, I'm going to say caught with it or has it in their possession, and especially if they're doing something illegal, that's all going to fall back on you. Don't get me wrong, they're getting in trouble too, but that's coming back to you and allowing it to be out of your possession. So that's another risk I don't necessarily,
Want to take. I got you. Absolutely. And I get you there. And then the other thing too, you get a lot, the people worry about the unfortunate thing.
We're going to die.
We're all going to die.
Yeah.
And the number one worry about buying a suppressor is, hey, when I die, what happens to it? I don't want the government to get it back, right? And I'm with you there, absolutely. But upon your death, and we've helped, unfortunately, several families go through this. If you own it as an individual, it'll transfer tax-free, so you never have to pay that $200 again on what's known as a Form 5 to whoever you heir it to. So I die, I want to give Jason all my NFA stuff. He fills out the Form 5. They take my name off the form. They put Jason's name on the form. Rock on. It's a check and balance through the ATF. The trust route is a simpler way. Because basically he just deletes my name off the trust. There's a couple forms you have to sign. It'll be stated how you do this in your trust, but you just delete my name, put his name in his place, and just the trust continues to be managed just under a new name. Think of it like selling a business. The government doesn't necessarily need to know because the business is still operational, just a new manager involved.
Well said.
And like I said, there's pros and cons, and when you come into the store to buy an NFA item from us, this is stuff we go through. We kind of help, we fill out your situation, we kind of pro and con it with you, and we kind of steer you the way that works best for you. It's not something like, okay, I got to think of all my will and who am I going to give it to, and no, just come in. We'll kind of help you with it,
and we make it to where it's not convoluted. We handle the paperwork side, all that. Jake describes it as a full white glove service. So you walk in, have no idea what you want. We're going to see what your need is. Say a real common one is I've got 3 or 4 hunting rifles. I'd like to be able to cover them all with one suppressor. Easy peasy. We got you covered there. We got several to choose from, ones that are in your budget. And really on the budget, a lot of it has to do with the material they're made out of. A lot of times titanium being lighter is going to cost a little bit more, whereas steel and aluminum,
a little less.
So after we pick that out,
and suppressors aren't a one can fits all type of thing. They're not really specific, but there's some specificity enough that we can, this one doesn't fit your needs, but this one does better.
Somebody said, exactly. I have an AR pistol in 308. It's going to have higher pressures and things like that.
So let's say this. Let's say that I've never owned a suppressor before. I already have my trust, or I'm going to do it as an individual. Take that out of the equation. But I'm your average Texas deer hunter, right? I've got a little place down in the hill country. I do some pig hunting. I've got an AR and 223. I've got a 308 bolt action and a 6.5 that are all suppressor ready. Means they're threaded.
Right.
And I walk through the door and I'm ready to get on board. What could somebody expect?
So, as I'm listening to what you're saying, I've got your 3 calibers there that you're mainly going to keep it on. You said some pig hunting. I know you're not, going to. You don't have a saw out there. You're not.
No.
You're not shooting belt-fed automatics.
No, I might get in a sounder of pigs and shoot a half a mag, if that. A lot of it mainly bolt hunting, a little bit of target practice, but I don't get out as much as I want. Maybe a night or 2 a week, if I'm lucky. But realistically, a couple times a month, and then 3 or 4 trips to the ranch.
So I'm going to go with one of the old faithfuls, so Ford and Chevys, right? And when I say this, so there's a lot of really, really good suppressor manufacturers out there and I love their products, and I think they're great companies. There's 2 of ones that have been established a very long time. Silencer Co. and Dead Air. So those I look at as the Ford and Chevy. Now, why would I go with Ford and Chevy over the Maserati or the Ferrari or any of that? Here's the thing. So we've been doing this for a decade now. And we've seen a lot of those really, really great companies for one reason or another go out of business.
Yeah, the new kids on the block that create a really
they've
cool...
got that hotness.
There's that new hook they got that sets them apart. But they just don't have any longevity. All of a sudden they start living a little too high on the hog, or they can't pay their bills, or whatever it is. For whatever reason, they go under. Now that warranty's not there anymore because there's no company more, and
you have a catastrophic failure in your can. You bring it to us. Hey, what do I do? Well, you've got a really expensive paperweight. Is what it boils down to,
because there's nobody to back it.
Yeah, especially there was a company out there, Crow,
and I have 5 Crow cans.
And it turned out they didn't realize it for a couple years when they got cans really started getting broke in.
But they start cracking along the serial numbers because they got hydrogen embrittlement in the titanium. And all 5 of my cans are hopefully not, but there's every time I pull the trigger, I could blow one up just because it finally got that stress fracture just right. And
So we saw enough of that in other companies like that come in where customers were angry, and rightfully so. But it's nothing we could do. We were upset about it too. So ever since we've been through that 2 or 3 times, I try to explain that to people and say, I don't want to diminish what this new company has or this, but this is why I like these companies and their warranties. So manufacturer's lifetime warranty, and I believe it was Silencer Co. who came out and said, we'll even fix your mistake one time. Like if you do something silly and you damage your can, we'll cover it.
Hey, I forgot
within reason.
I forgot 350 is bigger than 30 cal.
Right. So you basically shoot a 9 through there. You're gonna potentially crack some baffles. You're gonna do a little bit of damage, even if it's just the end cap. Send it into them; they'll take care of you. But that lifetime manufacturer's warranty means that if it does ever split, if anything crazy ever happens, they've got you. And we've seen it when we've had warranty stuff. They do have your back. They honor that warranty,
and they have honored some. They've warrantied out some
stuff I wouldn't have.
Yeah, some dumb choices. I mean, it was 100% a dumb choice. They know it's a dumb choice or situation, but they're like, hey, we got you.
Yeah.
Which speaks a lot for them. All right, so we come in and we've proed and conned out the suppressors. And I decided that this is the one I'm going to go with.
Okay.
Tell me what's
cool.
next.
So on your part, it's going to be really easy. It is going to require me getting your fingerprints, taking your photo, getting your personal information.
Inked or digital?
We do everything digital because we submit everything digitally.
Okay. I say this to set up the answers. The reason behind the digital is that way it speeds up all the processes. We don't have to send it up there for them to digitize the prints and do the stuff. We capture it. It stores it encrypted on our computer. I upload it to their website, and then it's instantly done. There's no extra steps to slow down any of this process.
Now, we do have our own kiosk. A lot of people come in and they're like, hey, do you have this company's kiosk? No, we don't. But we have strong beliefs and reasons for that. We've spent an exorbitant amount of money on our own firewall and our own security because the information we have to submit to the FBI.
Oh, it's sensitive.
It is. Yeah, it's all your personal information. And I like to be in control of the way that's disseminated and monitored. I'm just a little leery of anybody else doing it. You know, it's like I won't ride on the back of a motorcycle.
Oh yeah,
I'll drive one. But no, because I'm sure you're a great driver, but I want to be in control, and that's why we do that.
Absolutely.
So we get all that information from you. That whole process takes about 10 minutes at the most, and then you pay for the suppressor at that point. And the reason you pay for it then and not when you receive it is because we have to submit that serial number that's on that suppressor because that is technically going to be yours. That's your suppressor.
That number ties directly to you.
Yep. So it's going to have, that box is going to have your name on it. It's going to go in back and sit with thousands of its closest friends.
Yeah, because before this whole digital thing, when it's paper, you'd actually get back a $200 stamp. It was looked like a postage stamp.
Like a postage stamp.
And it had your serial number written on it. So that tied that stamp to that number or that suppressor to you.
And they kind of do the same thing now, but it's
just not near as cool.
Yeah, it's not near as cool. Yeah, it looks like a stamp. So at that point is when Jake here does his favorite thing in the world, and he submits it. Now, he's got it down to a science.
And this is why we do it that way. We submit so many of these is that this helps remove hiccups, errors, problems. I've gotten pretty dang good at reading trust and knowing where we're going to have problems, stuff that we can get ahead of the curve on, because nothing, it has happened historically. I'm not saying we've been perfect forever, but we've had a couple that came back with an error a long time ago, like in a trust or something like that, that you had to start over from square one. And that sucks after 12 months.
Absolutely. So that's something we want to avoid at all costs.
And so now we've got checks and balances to everything to make sure that this is as smooth as possible, it goes as quickly as possible.
Lots and lots of redundancies. And goes through many different sets of eyes, just like all our paperwork here does, just to ensure that you're going to get that suppressor as quickly as the ATF allows. And so not to brag, but we're one of the premier suppressor dealers in the state because of how thoroughly and we're good at it. I mean, we're good at submitting it, and it's Jake. You know, he's great at it. But the guys on the floor, who's ever getting your information, you know, and you'll see it in that 10 minutes we're getting your personal information. You'll see it going into 3 different locations. So it's going on the computer, it's going into one binder, and it's going on a clipboard, and that's to cover our bases and make sure nothing's missed.
Well, yeah, we want it submitted. You want your item as fast as we can get it to you, and we know it sucks. Because we
do it too.
We're all in the same boat. It takes the same amount of time for us, and I have the licenses to sell the stupid things.
Yeah.
But because of that, we are highly sympathetic to your situation. We want to get it to the ATF as fast as possible. We want them to process it as fast as possible, and we want you to get to enjoying it as fast as possible.
Absolutely.
So that's why there's so many kind of repetitive steps that nothing gets missed, nothing gets overlooked, and it is correct the first time.
So you come in, do your paperwork that evening or really close to it, depending on how late it was done. Jake's going to submit your paperwork. You'll receive an email from the ATF saying,
approved.
Well, it may be a couple when, you know, you're going to help us set up a login and everything.
Yeah. So you'll from us, you'll get a couple. One that's that they'll automatically send you showing that an account was set up. The other one shows that the paperwork was submitted. It looks just like the approval email, but it says submitted. Mm-hmm. And then after some amount of time, it will get another one that says approved. And once you get the approved one, you come
get
pick
in
it
here.
up.
Yep.
And depending on the suppressor style that you bought, some are directed where they screw just over the end of the barrel, mm-hmm. and some utilize a quick attach system over their own mounting hardware. And if you get one of the styles that are based off of that, the QD style, quick detach, if you bring the guns with you when you come get your suppressor, we'll actually help get everything all set up.
We'll mount it. If it requires being timed, we'll time it.
That way you walk out of the door that day and you're enjoying your investment ASAP. There's no extra steps, no extra BS.
So one thing we've ran into recently, and I get it, but you were talking about, you know, we don't have any control after the ATF gets it or anything, is we've had a lot of good long-time customers. So these approval times he was talking about, you know, that 5, 6, 7 days, they started a little over a month ago. Mm-hmm. Now, that was, as he said, they were submitted as individuals, but the downside of that is when it started a month ago, it was with everybody from that date forward.
Yeah.
So we still have customers out there.
I bet you we've got 300 plus cans that are still sitting in NFA purgatory.
Some of them are at 9, 10, 11, 12 months.
Because the ATF is the ATF, and they don't think this way. Historically, it was a first in, first out, so you could kind of guesstimate when you're going to get it. Well, they took everything from December 31st, 2023 and older and left them in a lump, and then went 1/1/24 forward, and the 1/1/24 forward is the new way, and the old way is being processed the old way. You figure they would just go, hey, catch up.
So we get all these phone calls. Hey, my buddy bought his can 4 days ago. He just got approved. I've been sitting on 10 months. What the hell's going on? And we can explain it to them, and some people are very understanding. Some people aren't. Mm-hmm. And I wish it's something we had more control over. We don't, but you know, we're always going to shoot you straight and tell you exactly what's happening. And always feel free to call the ATF or your congressman and let them know how displeased you are.
Because that's the only way stuff changes.
Yep. If you know, it's that bell curve. Mm-hmm. The more people that are loud about it, and
we get that 80% in there, or
then that's how we make change happen.
Yep. And speaking of change, this one I don't see changing anytime soon. But
machine guns.
But I can hope. I want them go fast toys.
Yeah.
I am really mad at 9mm and 223.
Oh man!
And so
they're so much fun, but they are not cheap.
No, they're not. So probably the most mystified part of the NFA is machine guns. Because the worst thing that Ronald Reagan ever did, buried in a farm bill in May the 15th of 1986, they banned ownership of, they banned civilian ownership of newly manufactured machine guns. So that all being said, yes, you can own a machine gun, but nothing that is currently nothing that's made new. So it had to have been already built and registered with the ATF as a machine gun prior to May of 1986. So if you're on the message forums and the blogs and you hear people call them pre-86 or transferable machine guns, that's what they mean. They're already registered and they're able to be sold from one civilian or to another, or a dealer to a civilian. And we have a couple here that are for sale. But like anything, there's that law, supply and demand.
Right.
Every year they're lost, stolen, blown up, destroyed, something. And so that pool gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
So and the price goes up
and up and up. So perfect example. When I wish I wasn't poor, because or smarter. When I got into this game a decade ago, a Mac 10, a Cobra Mac 10, retailed $2,500, $3,000, and now they're $13,000 on the average.
Yep.
A Colt M16 was like 16 to 18 grand. Now they're 35, pushing 40. So what you just heard, and I heard everybody collectively gasp across the internet over, holy crap, these things are expensive.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right.
Because they're not making any more of them.
Mm-mm. And so what a lot of people are doing, and they're seeing these as a great way to invest money. It's a tangible item you can enjoy, you can collect, that will appreciate in value, just like you would find art or land or anything else. And I know several people that heavily invest in machine guns as hedges against inflation.
Yeah.
And same way you would buy precious metals, stocks, bonds, or whatever, but they have a collection of cool stuff to play with.
And if the economy collapses,
you got a machine gun.
You got machine guns. So it's better than having a bank balance with zero in it.
So perfect example. If any of y'all been to the store lately, we've got the 2 Macs that are for sale. But there is a Westinghouse model of the 1917 Browning that is actually a transferable belt-fed 30-06, which in the next couple of days we're going to shoot some videos with.
Yeah.
And
looking forward to that.
Yeah, you and me both. But we've had 1919s. We've had
yes, we have.
M2 heavy barrels through here. And what's interesting about it, there's 2 pools of machine guns. There's the pre-86, like we talked about, and there's post-86 or dealer samples. And these are sales samples that dealers can have as a way to demo them to like law enforcement, military, stuff like that. And so we actually have a couple of those as well that we're always happy to show off and let people demystify the machine gun realm out here. And some of them are cooler than others. We've got the Thompson M1A, an actual Western Front issued World War II weapon. It was issued to a soldier during World War II and carried into battle, which is by far my favorite one. It's got the right cyclic rate. It's got the right pop. It just screams America.
Cool.
We've got our ghetto Glock Squitch, which takes that 19 and makes it will just rain 9mm brass. And then we've got a
P90.
That P90, a legit from Belgium real P90, which is our space gun. We also got a short barrel shotgun and some other stuff too. So if you ever get by the store and got questions about it, the NFA is really kind of what I enjoy. It's a subset of a subset of a subset that I kind of geek out over, trends and what's out there, what's cool. I saw the other day, it's one of only 2 249 saws sell that are on the registry, sold for $500,000.
Yep.
So there's some very, very expensive, very cool stuff out there. You want a howitzer? You can buy a howitzer.
Now, so let's say my dad or grandfather came back from World War II, Vietnam, whatever, Korea, whatever the conflict was, and had something that went fast, and he put it in the safe, and he
buried it in the closet.
And I just found it. What do I do?
Well, it's funny because I had this conversation yesterday. Guy had a friend who passed away and found one of these things in the closet, and he's like, "Hey, he never told me about it." That's tough.
It's really tough, and most people aren't going to like the answer.
So, you have a tough hill to climb and a very, very steep hill to climb. I do know for a fact there's been a couple times there have been, so you can't just go register it. There was an amnesty in 1968 that was the last time, like if you had a war bring back from like Korea, World War II, some Vietnam guns, you could go and go, hey, I got this machine gun, let me register it. That was the last time. There's talk about another. But the people that are big into this game have money and don't think they're not trying to influence their market not going down, right? But there's been a very limited few that have been able to show provenance that this gun was possessed prior and argued their way onto the transferable list.
Yeah.
That's the exception. They had a picture of the serial number on a dated photo or
super documented
news article. But yeah, like a lot.
Because we've had people come in and they have a gun. If it was transferable, would have been worth $80,000.
Yep.
And they know it, and they're excited. They think they just inherited a gold mine.
But because they realistically, they probably lawfully possessed it. Mm-hmm. But during the time, because I talked to my dad about this. It's like, hey, why in 1986 did you not register every AR receiver you could get your grubby paws on?
Wasn't a big deal.
He goes, nobody knew about it. It wasn't in the news. Yeah. Unless you were in the gun world, like you didn't know this was happening. And so a lot of people just didn't know it passed that time frame. And realistically, you're just kind of SOL. And it sucks. And I say this to a lot of people. That being said, if you have a loved one who has passed and you have one of these things that you may or may not know about, wink, wink, right? There is an attorney that I can refer you to. He is really, really good at this. He specializes, he's a criminal defense attorney, but he is a gun nut, class 3 nut, NFA guy. He's big into it. And he has successfully helped some of my customers get some legal stuff resolved so they could possess suppressors and get some of that done. Guys that erroneously got denied a suppressor transfer. But I do know he has helped some folks with the transferable machine gun thing. These grandpa found guns. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's successfully got one on the list yet, but I do know he has the avenues to talk to the right people to help you figure it out without you calling the ATF up going, hey, guess what I got?
Yep. So that's with those transferables. Mm-hmm. We talked about another type of transferable and explosive devices. So if Grandpa brought back a box of pineapple grenades and you find them in the basement.
That means your grandfather was a lot cooler than mine was.
I'm going to tell you how this is going to go down. They're not getting put in your name.
Yeah, no.
And you're going
to take a John boat out and just drop them off the side and just scoop up all the fish.
Don't listen to him. What you're gonna, I mean.
So realistically, if
you're gonna have a bomb squad at your house,
and this has also happened in my world. I know this has happened. I've talked to people. They've asked for advice. The explosive material and the priming material, if you actually happen to have a live bring back grenade, which has happened, mm-hmm. They get unstable. So as cool as it would be to go out in the back and pull the pin and chunk it, on those I would recommend.
There's a good chance you're going to pull that pin and become chunks.
And your 5-second fuse is about a half-second fuse, mm-hmm. and I know the guy this happened to. He made it about 15 feet before it exploded, and he took a ton of shrapnel.
So I hope you don't, but if you find it, and make that phone call, have them come pick it up, and
it's the same idea.
You're not going to be in trouble for it.
No, and then it's the same idea. Like if you ever happen to find, I know some folks that they go to the beachcomb and go to like Civil War battlefields that they find unexploded
artillery. Oh my God, yeah.
That there is a way that they can make it safe, and you get to keep like the mortar shell, but you're not going to keep that pineapple grenade. They're going to take it.
Yeah, and your neighbors are going to think weird things about you. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I actually had that happen. A lady called me. She goes, "Hey, I got some stuff from my husband. I don't know what it is. Will you come out looking at it?" And I was like, I can. I said, you know what it is? She's like, I'd rather not. I show up, it was a fucking grenade.
Yep.
I was like, really? She's like, I don't know where you got it.
Well, thankfully, we haven't had a live grenade brought in the store yet that we know of. But we have had people bring dummy grenades in thinking that they're real, that they,
Like, we're really worried about.
Yeah, their late husband or somehow they inherited it and they come in and they're being all incognito and they bring in a very light, inert grenade. Mm-hmm. And yeah, but it's always a fun conversation to have with them when they walk in. They're like, hey, I got something in the vehicle that I don't know what to do with.
And it's always wrapped up in like a tea towel.
Because that's going to stop everything.
That's what makes it safe.
Well, so, guys, if y'all have any more questions about this, any more detailed questions about it,
we just
touched the top
surface.
of it.
We can get deep into it. The other thing, if you are looking for investment grade firearms, mm-hmm. I do tend to specialize in that. If you're looking for something specific, or hey, I got a CD come, mature, and I got to do something with the cash, but I don't want to put it back in a CD. I want to do something. I got 20 grand. What can I buy with 20 grand? Well, we can come in and talk about, all right, Reason cost about 8 grand, and then Mini Uzi cost about 15, or Mac cost 10, but you can get the laser uppers, and we can start talking about all the ways we can kind of maximize some of your investment, but at the same time, there's some places I can show you on the internet that you can actually track the pricing and kind of how the return is, and so you can figure out, very similar to watching this, the stock market.
The stock market.
Like, for whatever reason, an MP5 hasn't changed a whole lot in a decade, but M16s and Macs have skyrocketed.
Which is weird because you would think the MP5 being, now don't get me wrong, is really expensive, but being one of the more iconic cool guns,
and this is outside the spec of the show, but it also has a lot to do with whether you got a registered seer, a registered receiver, or a registered gun, and there's caveats to it.
But if you call, we could talk about
like a registered MP5 H&K sear pack will always bring more than a registered gun, because you can move that sear pack to other hosts, and we can get into this if you're really interested or want to learn more about machine guns. More than happy to discuss this with you.
But if you do want a suppressor, we'll take care of you, and we'll make it easy. Come on down to Circle Star.
I mean, we'll be honest with you. I mean, we're straight up. We're on. I mean, the suppressors in the counter, the suppressors that we're running, mm-hmm. they're what we stand behind. That's what we're like. And more likely than not, if you're like, man, I don't know, I kind of like to. Can I hear it? And we'll walk out back real fast and demo for you. We want you to feel comfortable in what you're getting.
Yeah. Reason being, everybody that works here, including us, I mean, this is what we do. We hog hunt a lot. We shoot suppressors. We shoot a lot. We can give you a very honest opinion of what's in, and pretty much everything on the store. Everybody here can. If we carry it, we've tested it. We've tried it out. And I tell you what, there's a lot more stuff we've kicked out of this store and not carried mm-hmm. than we do. So if it's on this floor, you can trust it. We always say that we get customers that walk in and ask for specific brands and stuff that we don't carry, and they ask why. And the reason being is we wouldn't trust.
I wouldn't spend my money on it.
No. And I'm going to put, if I wouldn't trust my life with it, I'm not going to trust your life with it. And that goes for every product here. Mm-hmm. So, but we're always willing, if you ask why we don't carry it, I'll tell you why I don't carry it. Yeah. But suppressors, don't let it seem overwhelming. It's not. We make it easy. It's really a quick thing. It takes about 10 minutes on your part, and then a little bit of patience.
Yeah, first one's always the most daunting, because you're kind of going into it. It's not like a regular firearms transaction, but we make it as simple as possible, as easy to understand, and as painless as it could possibly be.
And fun. And might even give you a beer.
There you go. Makes it easy.
We've been known to do it before. So, guys, thank y'all so much for listening. We enjoy what we do. You can tell. This was a fun one. They're all fun. So this one just kind of dispel a bunch of the myths that are out there. We appreciate everybody who's liking, sharing, telling your friends about it. That's the only way people find out about us. We will have some sponsors here before too long, so you'll probably be seeing some banners and stuff down here or up here somewhere. And we really appreciate those guys for offering. It's a big deal, and everybody listening everywhere, man. If you get the opportunity, if you want a uniquely Texas experience, come into Circle Star. It's guaranteed to be a good time, and we'd love to see you.
Don't be surprised how long you'll stay, because you'll be having that much fun.
Mm-hmm. It's a blast. Yep.
So,
Thanks, guys. Y'all have a great week. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Circle Star Firearms and Outdoors podcast with your hosts Jake Cawthon and Jason Westmoreland. Be sure and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. New episodes drop every Monday and catch up in between episodes on the Circle Star Minute every Friday. For more information, visit CircleStarFirearms.com, or better yet, come see our great new store at 6320 Highway 90 in Anderson, Texas. Until next time, safe shooting, folks.